The Galactic Council had witnessed many conflicts in its 3,000-year history, but none like the eternal war between the Zephyrian Empire and the crystalline hegemony. For over 2 centuries, these ancient civilizations had locked themselves in a brutal stalemate that consumed entire star systems and turned once thriving worlds into barren wastelands. Commander Nora Chen stood at the observation deck of the human vessel Defiance, watching the distant flashes of plasma fire illuminate the darkness of space. Beside her, Lieutenant Alexander Rodriguez studied the tactical display with growing concern. They were part of the first human delegation to witness this cosmic tragedy firsthand. 217 years, Alexander said quietly, his voice heavy with disbelief. How do entire civilizations sustain warfare for that long? Nora shook her head, her dark eyes reflecting the distant explosions. Look at their formations. They're fighting by the book, the same book they've been using since the war began. Perfect mathematical spacing, predictable attack patterns, orderly retreats when shields reach critical levels. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline armor and energy-based weaponry, faced off against the hegemony's biomechanical ships in a dance of destruction that had become almost ritualistic. Each side knew exactly what the other would do, yet neither possessed the creativity to break the cycle. It's like watching a chess match between 2 grandmasters who've memorized every possible move, Alexander observed. Except the chess pieces are entire fleets. The human observers had arrived 3 days earlier as part of a diplomatic mission. The Galactic Council, desperate to end this resource-draining conflict, had invited representatives from every known species to witness the war and potentially offer solutions. Dozens of alien delegations floated in their respective vessels around the battlefield, all equally helpless to break the deadlock. Ambassador Vexhai of the Turian Confederacy had explained it during their first briefing. Both sides are too evenly matched. The Zephyrians' energy shields perfectly counter the hegemony's plasma weapons. The hegemony's adaptive armor negates the Zephyrians' crystalline projectiles. They destroy each other's forces at exactly equal rates. What about negotiations? Nora had asked. The octopus-like ambassador's tentacles had writhed in what humans had learned was their expression of hopelessness. They've forgotten why they started fighting. The war itself has become their culture, their identity. Neither side knows how to exist without it. Now watching the mechanical precision of the slaughter, Alexander felt a familiar human emotion rising within him. Frustration. Throughout Earth's history, humans had broken countless stalemates through unpredictability, innovation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. Captain, Alexander said, turning to face Nora, what if we stopped thinking like observers and started thinking like humans? Nora raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning we do what we always do when faced with an impossible situation. We change the rules. Within hours, Alexander had convinced Captain Martinez to approve his plan. The other alien delegations watched in bewilderment as the human vessel broke formation and began broadcasting on all frequencies. This is the human ship Defiance to all combatants, Alexander's voice echoed across space. We're offering our services as referees. The response was immediate and predictably hostile. Both sides demanded the humans retreat to a safe distance. The Galactic Council representatives frantically contacted Captain Martinez, warning that interfering in the conflict violated 17 different interstellar treaties. But Alexander and Nora had studied something the other observers had overlooked: human military history. They knew that sometimes the most effective way to stop a fight was to give both sides something else to focus on. Phase 1, Nora announced as she piloted their smaller scout ship directly between the 2 fleets. Make ourselves impossible to ignore. The Scout's Honor was a tiny vessel compared to the massive warships surrounding it, but it moved with a fluidity that neither fleet had ever encountered. Instead of maintaining mathematical formations, Nora flew in sweeping arcs, barrel rolls, and sudden direction changes that made targeting impossible. What are they doing? Came the confused transmission from a Zephyrian commander. Some kind of dance? Replied a hegemony captain, equally baffled. Alexander began broadcasting again. Attention all combatants. We've analyzed your conflict and identified the problem. You're both fighting the same war you've been fighting for 2 centuries. But we're here to show you how humans fight. Without warning, Nora activated the ship's mining lasers, not weapons but industrial tools used for asteroid harvesting. Instead of firing at either fleet, She began carving geometric patterns into nearby space debris, creating brilliant light shows that were impossible to ignore. "What is the purpose of this display?" demanded the Zephyrian admiral. "You want to know how to win?" Alexander responded. "Stop fighting each other and start fighting us." The audacity of the statement sent shockwaves through both fleets. A single small ship was challenging two of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. "You propose we unite against humanity?" the hegemony commander asked, his biomechanical voice expressing something that might have been amusement. "We propose you remember what you're actually fighting for," Nora interjected. "Your species are artists, engineers, philosophers. But for 2 centuries you've been nothing but soldiers. When did you last create something beautiful instead of destroying it?" Alexander keyed in the next phase of their plan. Across space, human ships began broadcasting not tactical data or weapon specifications, but music, art, poetry, stories of human conflicts and the peace that followed. "This is what we fight for," Alexander said simply. "Not territory or resources or ancient grudges. We fight for the right to create, to explore, to become something better than we were yesterday." The effect was immediate and profound. For the first time in decades, both fleets stopped firing simultaneously. Not because of superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but because the humans had reminded them of something they had forgotten: why civilizations exist in the first place. In the months that followed, historians would call it the awakening moment. The point when 2 species remembered their humanity, or rather, their equivalent of what humans called their better nature. The Zephyrians and the hegemony didn't end their conflict immediately, but they began talking, planning, creating together instead of destroying each other. And at the center of these negotiations sat 2 humans who had done the impossible, not by being the strongest or the smartest, but by being the most stubbornly, irrepressibly human. As Nora and Alexander watched the former enemies collaborate on their first joint space station, Alexander smiled. "You know what I think the real lesson is here?" "What's that?" "Sometimes the best way to win a war is to remind everyone why peace is worth fighting for." The war that no one could stop had finally ended, not with a bang, but with a reminder of what it meant to be more than just warriors in the vast darkness of space.